This course is on transferring transactions in the Inventory Control module. Transfer transactions simply allow you to move inventory from one stock ID to another. Let's get started learning about transfer transactions. In this lesson, these are the steps we'll follow. From the System Manager, we will open the Inventory Control module, go to the Activity menu and the Transfer tab. Note, costing fields will not appear by default, but you can turn them on in the Preferences window, and we'll show you that later in the lesson. Begin here in the System Manager and select the Materials tab. And choose the Inventory Control module. From there, choose the Activity menu and select Transactions. The Transaction window appears. This lesson is on using the Transfer tab, so choose that one. Before we dive into the module itself, there are some default settings that you should know about. You can see these by clicking on the Options menu, then on Preferences. These preferences are user-specific. In the Preferences window, you can decide which items to appear on certain screens or reports. If Display Costs is marked, the Cost Unit field displays on all transaction tabs except the Transfer tab. Also, Unit Cost and Extended Cost columns display on the transaction grid. When Display Due Quantities is marked, the Balance Due field displays on selected transactions tabs. Also, the values displayed in the Transaction Grid Quantities column after a query match the value displayed in the Balance Due field for each order. When Display Due Quantities is not marked, the Balance Due field does not display on the selected transaction tab. A zero value displays in the Transaction Grid Quantities columns for all line items after a query. To display on-hand quantities on the Cycle Count tab, mark the checkbox next to Display on-hand quantities in the Cycle Count box. So if you want one of these items to appear, you will need to place a check mark in this window. Let's take a look at the results of configuring these settings. We will go ahead and place a check mark in each item. Once the checks have been placed, click OK. Then close the transaction window and reopen it so the window can refresh with your new choices. These fields were not visible earlier before we placed the check marks in the Preferences window. In Max, if you have more than one stockroom ID, there may be occasions when there is need to transfer parts from one stockroom to another. This screen facilitates that transfer without making separate issue and receipt transactions. It combines an unplanned issue from one stockroom and an unplanned receipt to another stockroom, all in one transaction. Let's process a single transfer. If you know the part ID you'd like to use, manually enter it here. If you are making changes to an existing part ID, double-click to view a list of currently existing codes. The Part Master browser window will open. Click the Search button to view a list of existing codes. You may scroll through the list using the arrows to the right of the browser window. When you find an item you'd like to use, double-click to add it to the Transfer tab. Enter the stock ID you are transferring from or select one from the browser. If a stock ID is already showing, you can erase that one from the selection field by selecting the Clear button. Click the Search button to view all the part stock records and double-click to select one. Or to close the browser window and return to the Transfer tab, press the Close button. The zone field is a 10-character user-defined field. Its purpose is to help define the physical location within the stockroom. The field has a one-to-one relationship to the stock ID. It will always default first to the present zone from the part-stock relationship. Max allows you to change the zone after displaying a warning. If a zone is changed, other stock in the same stock ID will be changed to the new zone and the quantities added together. In order to maintain two zones, two separate stock IDs must be defined. Now we're going to decide where the stock is moving to. Either manually enter or double-click to view the browser window. Search for and add a stock ID in the same way as previously described. Browse through the list of available items and double-click to select one. Now you will choose the zone that you would like to move the stock to. Enter in a quantity amount. In this field, enter any reference information that you wish for this transaction. The user-defined key field is a 15-character field. It will be saved to the transaction history and lot tracking files. The user-defined reference field is another place for you to enter additional information regarding this transaction. To go ahead and apply your transfer transactions, press the Process button. If the part is under Lot and Serial Control, the Lot Serial dialog box will open so you can select the lot serial numbers that you will be transferring. Let's talk about the transfer grid in the lower portion of the screen. Multiple transfers of stock from one stock ID to another can be processed simultaneously using the transfer grid. You can choose to view current on-hand inventories in order of part number or in order of stock location by clicking the appropriate radio button. You can browse and choose the start and end of the range to be displayed in the grid. Click the Query button to display the chosen range of information. Current on-hand quantities are displayed. You can change the quantity and enter the stock ID and other relevant information before processing transfers. Enter Transfer To information for as many lines as you wish. Process the transaction, highlight the lines to be processed, and then click the Process button. Lines that have been processed will disappear from the grid. Click Query to update the stock information in the transfer grid. You can enter a range to search for by using the Start and End fields. If you know the item you'd like to use, manually enter it, or double-click to open a browser. After double-clicking, you can click the Search button in the browser. The transfer grid is helpful because you can perform multiple transfers using this grid. Once you have chosen the part ID range, the current on-hand inventory will display. Once you have chosen a range, select the Query button to display the information. Any items matching your search or query will appear in the grid. After you enter the quantity and the to-stock ID, you may now press the Process button to process all transfer transactions at once. To remove the items that are showing in the grid, select the Clear button. And the grid will be cleared of all information. To exit this screen, click the Activity menu and select Exit. And you will return to the System Manager. In review, today we have learned how to process inventory transfers. You may do that for a single part or for multiple parts using the grid. Thank you for joining us at Exact Software.